Ghosting. I don't think you're gonna find a topic that is more controversial and more frustrating than the topic of ghosting. Regardless on which side you're on, ghosting is definitely an issue in our hiring market right now. And in this video, I'm gonna talk about why you as a candidate may be being ghosted by the recruiter and what you can do about it. I'm Jeremy Nichols, and I'm here to help candidates and recruiters in this current hiring market. In this video, we're going to be going over some reasons why you as a candidate may be being ghosted by recruiters and some tactics and practices that you can implement to hopefully avoid that happening in the future. But before I get into that, please like this video, hit the subscribe button, and ring that notification bell for weekly updates. I'll be updating this channel on a weekly basis with content for recruiters and candidates in the current hiring market. So, with all that said, let's get into it. The first reason, there are more qualified candidates in that recruiter's pipeline. Now, you might feel like you're the perfect fit. You've read that job description and you fit it to the T. But sometimes there's things that are even deeper in the job description or even deeper within the company that recruiter knows is a fit, okay? And it's that recruiter's responsibility to dig into the nuts and bolts of the candidate. Now, if they see candidates that have something on their resume that is more of a fit than you, they're gonna reach out to those people first. And unfortunately, sometimes that will leave you in the dust. It's simply a game of numbers. A lot of these recruiters are getting hundreds of applications and resumes for a job posting. And unfortunately, your odds just decrease as the position becomes more popular. Now, you might be wondering, well, why do I not get just an email? I want a notification I just want to know if they received my resume, right? You're probably thinking, don't they have automated emails that go out to every single candidate? A lot of the websites do that, yes, but not all of them do. Because a lot of times when recruiters post their jobs on a job board, there's other niche sites that they're spidered to. And some of those niche sites are not gonna send you an automated email. You may think that you're applying directly to the company, but a lot of times it went to one of those sites. And when you apply, the recruiter may get your email or your application in their inbox, but that automated email that lets you know they received it, you're not gonna get it every time. Here are some things that you can do to hopefully help you not be ghosted during the process. Make sure you do some research. Recruiters want to hear and want to know that you know what you're applying for and the details of that position. So, although the recruiter is going to navigate and control the actual interview, have your 30-second to 45-second sales pitch in your mind. Practice that before you go to the interview. So when you have an opportunity to sell yourself, you do not stumble, you do not forget things you want to say, and you're able to address why you're the perfect candidate for that position during that interview. You don't want to leave regretting that you forgot to say something that you knew was crucial for you landing the job. So research and practice and just know that elevator sales pitch like the back of your hand. Second reason why you might be ghosted. You're great, you're qualified, but they're just not sold on you yet. You've done the interview, you've gone through the first few steps, you've crushed it in the interview, and now you're in the negotiating phase. Maybe there's something that's going on in that stage that is throwing them off a little bit. Maybe you're being too demanding, or they might be perceiving you as some kind of prima donna with too many questions. Whatever the case may be, I can't answer that. Every recruiter is completely different. And every recruiter has a different personality, just like every candidate does. So it's very important that you're cautious on how you're navigating the negotiation stage and how you're even making it through the final step of the interview. Even though you might have a job offer in front of you, sometimes you still might have to have a fourth and final conversation with the CEO or somebody who is the final decision maker. Even though you met through the recruiters and you made it through with the interview process, steps 1, 2, maybe 3, that CEO might be that sign off on your job offer letter. And you have to be cautious that this is not a slam dunk into your butt is in the seat until the ink is dry. You're there on your first day. You have the training manual in front of you. You're giving them your social security card, your driver's license for paperwork. It is not over. So be very, very conscious of how you are still interacting during that process. The gist of this section is just to be mindful and observant on every single person that you speak to in that company during this process, from the receptionist to the front office manager to the CEO to your recruiter. Everybody you have communication with, make sure you're being very, very aware on your mindset, your positivity, and just when you do have questions, make sure they're structured and not just too abundant, right? As a recruiter, I'm fine answering all your questions, but sometimes I have candidates that just inundate you with a lot of questions that can be answered later on in the process. And although I'm okay with that, I do know that there are recruiters out there that have been put off by that, and that kind of shows them a little bit of a high maintenance red flag. Again, this is probably a rare instance, but I'm here to share with you just things to be cautious about. So hopefully, if you do see some kind of lack of communication, you can just be aware on how you're acting throughout the process. Another reason why candidates might be ghosted during the interview process. You did not follow a particular instruction properly. Now think about this. There are steps through the process and emails and correspondence going on between you and the hiring managers throughout the process. You might have to take an assessment. You might have to fill out a reference check. You may have to do some sort of test. Whatever the case may be, there are instructions. And having somebody, a candidate, who is a critical thinker, a problem solver, and number one, organized is vital to them wanting to proceed with you as a candidate. And if you are showcasing that you lack in any of those characteristics, that might be a reason why you were ghosted. So what do you do about it? The answer is pay attention. Read every correspondence properly. Take the time to read through any detail that you may see. And if you have any questions, just follow up and ask that recruiter or hiring manager to elaborate. But making sure that you're able to take these simple instructions through the process is pretty important. And again, it's not an excuse for why you should be ghosted. Nobody should be ghosted. But these are reasons why you might have been. Another reason why you might be ghosted. Unfortunately, maybe the company or the recruiter is simply procrastinating. There could be something going on within the company that is taking a little bit more time. Maybe a acquisition didn't happen when it was supposed to. Maybe there were some changes within that they're still waiting to get a decision made by. Whatever the case may be, sometimes the company is procrastinating and they don't want to lose you as a candidate, so they just drag the process out. Unfortunately, that's terrible. I mean, for me as a recruiter, I walk my candidates through all the steps. If I hear of some changes going on within the search, I let my candidates know. But a lot of recruiters or hiring managers, this isn't their main responsibility, and they have other things on their plate. So to get back to you and give you all these details, sometimes it just isn't their priority. Now, what can you do about it though? Well, you can't do too much about this one, but you can try to build your relationship with that team. Now, again, be very cautious on your delivery because you don't want to come across as demanding or annoying to the recruiter, but try to at least once a week touch base with them or box them in on a style of communication that you guys can commit to. Like, hey, Brian, once a week, is it okay that I call you on Fridays to check in on the process? Or, hey, Stacy, is it okay that I send you a weekly wrap up on the interview? That way, you know that you have a time where you can follow up on this position. Now, I know that most candidates do not want to wait weeks, sometimes months, but unfortunately, depending on what type of job you're applying for, if it's more of a C-suite position or director level search, sometimes these searches can go on for weeks, sometimes months. So again, it really depends on what type of position you're applying for. But if you're in the process and you feel like it is dragging out too long, again, try to box that recruiter or hiring manager into some form of communication, like a planned communication. That way you can have some peace of mind that you guys are still in the process and you can have some follow-up on at least a weekly basis. Another reason why you may have been ghosted. That recruiter or that hiring manager was fired, went on vacation, something happened in their life, and then you were ghosted. Now, this explanation is not as likely as most, but it still happens. I've seen it happen, I've watched it happen, and I've heard about it happening. So I wanted to touch on it a little bit. So if your recruiter or your hiring manager or your point of contact was let go, went on vacation, forgot to follow up with you, so what can you do about this particular reason? Well, there's not much you can do to address that point of contact or that recruiter, but you can start a practice to make it less likely going forward in any other interview you go to. All right? I would start a communication log. Any interview or any position that you apply to going forward, try to get not just one, but 2, maybe 3 points of contact throughout the process. So if something like this unfortunately happens, you can follow up with somebody else and just check in on your status and check in on that person. Another reason why candidates are being ghosted in the interview process by recruiters. And unfortunately, this reason right here is happening more often than I care to admit. There are hiring managers and recruiters out there that are just simply uncomfortable giving bad news. I think there's this nervousness of letting a candidate know that they're not going to move forward in the process and having to address that with them. Now, you're probably thinking, how is that possible if they're in the interview process and they've been recruiters for so long? How do they not know how to address a candidate? I think this is kind of twofold. Greener recruiters or newer hiring managers who have acquired this position are still trying to get used to doing this often. And they think that some candidates are not going to be receptive to the information that they give them. So there's that. And then there's recruiters who have been around for 20 plus years who simply just don't want to take the time to do it because they're uncomfortable with the amount of time it takes to sometimes explain to candidates. Some candidates take it like a champ. You tell a candidate, you're pretty straightforward, you get your point across, they understand, you shake hands, you move on. But some candidates require more attention. They might want more explanation. They might want to pitch themselves even more to you if you're the recruiter. And some recruiters are just uncomfortable with that, or they just plain don't want to listen to it. So unfortunately, they ghost you. So what can you do about that? Well, you can't win every single job that you apply for. That's a fact. But with this one, unfortunately, it's going to take a little bit of elbow grease. But this one is persistence. If you feel that you were a great interview, or you feel that you at least want to know more about why you were disregarded as a candidate or disqualified, you're gonna have to really be persistent on this one. And this goes back to communication. And I mentioned it earlier, a communication log. In fact, I made a video on recording the interview process and organizing your steps, which I'll put in the link right up here. And in that video, I make an Excel spreadsheet where you can record the steps throughout your interview process so you can follow up properly. Now, back to this, recruiter or hiring manager who doesn't want to give you the bad news. Well, if you're demanding that and you really want that, you're going to have to follow up a couple times. So don't just sit back and think, okay, we interviewed and then I'm waiting and I haven't heard and they ghosted me. I would say try at least 3 times. Now, unfortunately, that pretty much means if they're ignoring you to the 3rd time, you're not a candidate. But I know that there's some of you out there that still just want to know, is there something that I can do better? Now, a lot of HR and a lot of recruiters are very careful how they navigate this because they don't want to get themselves in trouble. Unfortunately, there's a lot of states out there with a lot of pending lawsuits, and HR professionals and recruiters are very careful how they navigate it. But there's still a lot of us out there that will tell you enough where you can just be a better candidate going forward. In order to get that, just follow up a couple times. Voicemail, if you have been texting back and forth through the process with some of these hiring managers, text them, email them, and you can rinse and repeat 2, maybe even 3 more times if you really want to hear the reason why. But unfortunately, being the bearer of bad news is one of the more common reasons why candidates are not hearing back from recruiters. So I'm going to give you one more reason why candidates are being ghosted by hiring managers or recruiters. And this one, I think, is the most common reason why. It's not their main job responsibility. I'm a recruiter, a headhunter. I do this all day, every day. It's my main responsibility. My recruiters in my firm, this is their main responsibility. We have to get back to every single person who's in process. Now, again, I'm going to rewind that a little bit. In process, just because you send an application in and you hit click and you apply to a position, I don't consider that a process. There's too many resumes coming to recruiters. It is literally impossible for me to call every single person who clicks and applies. You're not going to hear from me. But if you talk to me, email, phone, text, and you're in process, whether it be a phone interview or all the way to the end, you will hear back from me. I will never ghost somebody who's in process. And by in process, I mean you've been contacted by me. But a lot of hiring managers and a lot of recruiters out there that are working within the company have multiple job responsibilities. And this particular search that you might be interviewing for is unfortunately maybe way on the priority list on the bottom. Some of them are HRDs and they're doing, employee payroll. They might be doing benefits. They might be doing training and development. They might be doing an audit. They have so many different responsibilities. Sometimes it's not even HR. It might be a controller, an executive assistant. It might be a director in the department that you're applying for. So if you're in finance, it might be the director of finance. And that director of finance, recruiting is not their main responsibility. That is just a task that was put on their plate, and sometimes it's just plainly a nuisance to them. So again, not an excuse. This is a reason. A lot of times when you're applying somewhere, the people that are handling that position are not focusing on this particular search as their main priority. So this is a reason why a lot of them just aren't focusing on it like a recruiter or a headhunter would. So what can you do about that? It's the same pattern I've been saying throughout the whole video. Communication, positive mindset, and just great follow-up. A lot of times in the interview process, if you're not hearing back from the company and it gets to a point where it's just clearly unprofessional and you're just boiling and irate and you've reached out to them 3 times and you still haven't heard back, you just need to brush your shoulders off and move on. Chalk it up as that is a company that you don't want to work with anyway. Obviously, there's something going on, whether it be the person you're interviewing is just inundated with too much and it's just a mess and it's unorganized and chaotic, or maybe they just have no empathy or they just have a bad company culture. Whatever the case may be, there's a reason why you're not in that process any longer. And as scary as it is as a candidate, and as much as you just really may need that job right now, it's not going to help you to just hone in and dwell on that lack of communication. You need to brush your shoulders off and go forward to the next one. Now, I hope that this video helps you a little bit on wondering some of the reasons why. Again, I want to reiterate, this is not an excuse. I'm not here to make an excuse for recruiters or hiring managers why you're ghosted. It shouldn't be happening, but it does. And for us to dwell on that, and it's for candidates to let that damper their job interviewing experience, is just, there's nothing positive coming out of that. So I wanted to kind of give you some background knowledge on why these things might be happening and what to think about going forward. And I hope this video helped. If you like this video, please hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell for weekly updates on this channel. If you have any questions at all, please write them in the comment section below. And if you want to send me a personalized message, you can email me at jeremy@geckohospitality.com. I will see you next week, and I hope you have a great week.